views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Justice Forums and Happy New Year. I am Daren, Jaime. And of course, we're glad to have you here on the show. If people ask the question, what are the social justice forums about? Well, we talk about the inequities that some people face. We promote civic engagement. We give you multiple points of view. And most of all, we get perspectives from people who really have boots on the ground and making a difference in our society. So we encourage you to stay connected to us right now as the social forums begin. For the past 25 years, Student Leadership Network has cemented its legacy in education and innovation by working to make equity in education a reality, supporting nearly 50,000 young people growing up in diverse and underserved communities nationwide to gain access to higher education. Now they're working towards a future without barriers to educational opportunities that all students deserve. Here with us on the show, we're pleased to have the Young Women's Leadership School of the Bronx co-director, I should say, Devon Eisenberg. And Devon, we thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So for somebody who doesn't really know about the Young Women's Leadership School of the Bronx, walk us into the halls of your classroom.
Okay, so we opened in 2012 with just a sixth grade, and we were so fortunate to partner up with Student Leadership Network and follow in the footsteps of our sister schools. So we are the fifth school in all of the boroughs, and collectively we have about 100% graduation rate, and in our school we have 94% of our students matriculating to college every year. And if you look at the stats compared to the Bronx, that's a huge difference. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the whole girl education model we use. We are a single gender school, and we start teaching computer science in the sixth grade for our girls. So by the time they're in ninth grade, they are coding, they are making websites, they do hackathons, all this stuff. So they're able to compete with people outside of this zip code from different areas around the country, around the world even, which is really a great thing. Another thing I think that makes our school really unique is the sense of sisterhood that's really here. Our students, since they start, and I think by taking the males out of the classroom, they're always trying to push each other to do better, not competing with one another. And it really is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
So when we talk about an all-girls school, I can come from the perspective of, for the first, up until about sixth grade, I was in an all-boys school, and I really got some flat footing in there. And when I realized there's a difference between being in an all-boys environment versus a co-ed mixed environment. So give me, what do you feel are some of the benefits when you have the opportunity to be able to educate young ladies in a place where it's pretty much, all them?
So I think a big part of the whole girl model is focusing on collaboration. And you walk around our classrooms, obviously things are a little different right now because of COVID, but there's lots of group work happening everywhere, that they are not just accountable for their own learning, but they're accountable for everyone in their class's learning. We see our students when they get to their senior year, and some of them start maybe developing senioritis, right? And struggling a bit, they grab their friends and pull them up and say, okay, we're gonna do this together. We're not crossing the finish line without you because we started this together and we're finishing together. And I think without having the competition of boys in the classroom, they're able to really develop those bonds and realize their success is not individual, but collective.
Yeah. Equity is a big name that we use here on the show, talking about how people can get to a place of equity. From your institution, how do you feel that you're, achieving equity, and what are some of the innovative ways that you're doing that?
I think our teachers are phenomenal. I couldn't say enough good things about them. And I think something that's really important to everyone at Twills Bronx and at the Student Leadership Network is that our students can see themselves in the curriculum, right? They can't just be reading books about the 1800s, about people who they can connect to. So all of our classroom libraries are revamped so that there's books where they see themselves and they can give input into the curriculum. And I think that that's a big part of equity. We also spend a lot of time teaching our students that their voice matters and how to be advocates in the world, right? They can't just be passive to everything happening. We've noticed the inequities in our world have always been there. In the past 2 years, they've been exemplified even more. And I think one of the big things we've been focusing on with our students is you're the ones who are going to make that change. You're going to continue what's starting now. And how are you going to make your voice heard? So as you walk through our classrooms, you hear our teachers pushing that all the time in the classroom of how they can advance for not just themselves, but for everyone in the community.
And so when we talk about young ladies in the classroom, walk us into the classroom. What makes the classroom experience so different for the students there? Because when you talk about a 94%, I mean, 100% graduation rate, or I think you mentioned, and 94% in another category, that's huge. And that's a difference maker. We don't always see those numbers across the Bronx and even across New York City. But obviously, you got some secret sauce there. You're doing something well. So what is it for you?
So I think part of it is our partnership with the Student Leadership Network, that they're really able to connect us to a lot of outside organizations. Our students start touring colleges in 6th grade. We partner with mental health clinics. We partner with Broadway theaters. So our students are getting out there and participating in things in the city, not just inside the Bronx. And I think another big thing is we start pushing college in 6th grade. Our students come in that first day in the summer before their 6th grade, and they're placed in a homeroom that has a college name, right? Every year, that's how they travel as a college. So it's not if you're going to college, it's where you're going to college, or what vocational path is the best path for you, so that you're able to be self-sufficient and happy when you graduate from us, because that's the most important thing. But I think the other big thing is it's a community effort. We have a full-time college counselor provided by the Student Leadership Network, but the work doesn't all fall to her. It falls to all the teachers in the building, all the staff in the building, to make sure that our students are making choices that are right for them, right for their future, and right for their family's future.
We've heard so many people talk about when it comes to schools, we're just trying to survive. And I'm talking about throughout the COVID pandemic. We're just trying to survive, just trying to make it through. You definitely taken it to another direction. It's not just surviving, it's actually thriving. But I know that you've had your challenges during COVID. Talk to us about how you've been able to navigate and to get that same success and graduation rate, given the fact that we're in a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say the past 2 years have been a bit challenging. They definitely have. When we first did close our building stores in 2020, it was a lot of giving out devices and making sure that our students all could learn from home. And I think that then goes back to the sense of community that I talked about before. Throughout the pandemic, our kids started each day with a check-in group where every adult in the building had a group of 10 kids. And in that Zoom room, maybe it was playing games, maybe it was singing songs, maybe it was talking about what's going on. But again, keeping that sense of connection so that they knew they weren't alone, right? Because that was a really hard part for many of us during the pandemic, of feeling isolated from family and friends. We also do a lot of family workshops on Zoom that we started doing as well, ranging from a psychiatrist talking to parents about how to parent during a pandemic, right? Something new for a lot of our parents, obviously. To Zumba classes at night, so that we're still encouraging our families to engage together. I also think in terms of the college process, we have almost 100% of our students who are graduating in June have completed their FAFSA already for financial aid. And I think that was a big learning of the pandemic, was we don't need the parents to come to the building. We could set up a Zoom and do all their paperwork that way, which could be much easier. They could do it on their lunch break, right? All these different things, and then trying to think about what we learned during the pandemic to keep us growing. And at the end of the day, our kids are incredibly resilient. They're from the Bronx, right? They're accustomed to going through challenging situations and rising up above them. And they continued to do so during the pandemic, and still as the pandemic keeps going.
Yeah. And for us, I know that, looking as a media outlet and seeing a lot of people trying to navigate through the pandemic, particularly in the area of education, we've talked to educators, we talked to parents, we talked to students about, the divide. We talked about socialization. We talked about all these things that seem to really have impacted them in such a way where, going to school can now be so much more burdensome because of all the extra added things that have come on. But it seems as though you've done a great job in lightening the load. Talk to me about the receptivity of parents. And when you bring this to them to say, hey, listen, we can talk about Zumba, or the hidden factor of just basically mental health and illness, right? Because a lot of people struggle with mental health during this time. And it was something that a lot of people just put to the back burner. But it seems as though that you really embraced it, and actually didn't just embrace it, but provided a service to try to deal with that.
Right. And that's, again, we're definitely fortunate with Student Leadership Network to help us find some of those things. So we work with a child psychiatrist in Texas. We actually she's doing a presentation this evening for our families on suicide and depression, right? Because those are things that have been happening during the pandemic, and they're important to talk about and for parents to know about. We also have other partnerships where we have social workers coming to the building and giving trauma counseling, as we know a lot of our students did experience significant loss during the pandemic. And I think the more we bring these things to our families, the more likely that they're going to engage with us for them. And then, of course, balancing that with the fun Zumba or the cooking class and all those things too. I think the other thing is this year and last year, we only had 17% of our students in the building. And this year, obviously, everything's back. And overall, our kids are happy to be here. Kids signing up for extracurricular activities is the highest it's ever been. They're so happy to have that in-person connection again that it's really a beautiful thing having them here.
You have a very special time coming up, a 25th anniversary that's coming around the corner. An exciting time for you guys. Talk to us about the 25th anniversary, what it means, and I know you're having a special gala at a very special place.
Yes, it is. It's very exciting when me and Lee Marie Loriano opened the school together. And at that point, they were about to have, what was it, their 15th anniversary. And we talked all about how how things were plowed through in order to make a single gender public school. That was a huge thing 25 years ago, and how excited we were to become a part of this initiative. And now 10 years later, we're having our 10-year anniversary, and the network is having their 25-year anniversary, and the amount of students that have been impacted through TWIL schools through this organization and through CBI schools is unbelievable. When we talk about the millions and millions of dollars of scholarship money that our students are able to achieve due to CBI makes all the difference in our students' lives and in their families' trajectory.
And for yourself, obviously, an opportunity to impact the lives of so many young women. And I know you yourself have a personal history, a leader, and doing some great work in the borough, the Bronx and beyond. Share with us a little bit about you and what got you to where you are today.
I was working at another school in the Bronx, and my friends and I decided we saw a real need for young women of color for different type of education in order where they could break through stereotypes that society may have for them. And at that point, we decided the easiest way to do that was to create a school in 10453 and to provide our students this opportunity. And it has been, I can say for me, a life-changing opportunity. I get to see my kids come in at 11 years old, and when they leave us, they're 18 years old. And to be able to see them grow up from little girls into young women is such an amazing experience. We currently actually have a graduate of 2019 working here and a graduate of 2021 working here, both part-time, but seeing them come back, give back to the community, and be such great role models for the younger kids, it's heartwarming every day.
Yeah. And it's got to be a great feeling. I mean, when you see the ones that you've actually poured into at an early age, and now they come back and then they give back, and or just to see them be able to graduate. So for yourself, how hard of a move was it to really detach and say, you know what, I'm going to do this thing on my own. I see what it is out there. I don't like what it is, but I'm going to create a solution. I'm going to do something about this, and I'm going to be a part of the change. I'm not going to talk about the problem. I'm going to actually be a part of the solution. How hard of a detachment was that for you? Because for many people, when you kind of like leave your career and what you've known for so long, that comfort zone that I like to talk about, it can really become quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think when I said before that Lee Marie and I thought the easy way to deal with this was just to make a school, maybe it wasn't the easiest way to make change. It definitely was a big lift, but with the partnership of SLN, they really helped us, right? Because they'd done this 4 times before. And I think in the past 3 years, everything has changed every year due to the pandemic, right? So every year we're kind of starting fresh and reassessing everything we've done in the past. So it's kind of been like opening a new school every year for the past 2 years with all the guidelines changing, but it's something I would never change. I definitely, seeing these students come through here and seeing them grow up and seeing their lives change, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing or nowhere else I'd rather be.
Yeah. So for yourself, talk to us about how people can get connected to the school. If there's a young person out there, a family member that says, you know what, this may be a great opportunity for us. What can they do to be a part of the school?
So definitely visit our website, which is www.twillsbronx.org, and it's TYWLS. We have a bunch of open houses coming up. We have one tomorrow night, actually, at 6 p.m. And all of our open houses are on Zoom. And we're in the process of recruiting for a new 6th grade class and a new 9th grade class coming in. And we would love to have you come visit us, learn more about us. And our doors are always open here as well. You're definitely welcome to come in and see the school at any time. Our kids are amazing, and anybody would be lucky to meet them.
Devon Eisenberg, thank you so much, and congratulations on the great success that you're having. And certainly, maybe one day we'll get you back, and you should bring a couple of your success stories with you, and we'll have an opportunity to meet them as well. Love that. We love that. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
All right,
meeting.
Devon Eisenberg. Yes, my pleasure meeting you. Our guest here on the Social Justice Forums. Want you to stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, but we got more show as the Social Justice Forums continues in a moment.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet,
welcome back to the show. The Gray Panthers NYC is an organization committed to combating ageism and achieving social justice through intergenerational advocacy. Now, they work to create a humane society that puts the needs of people over profits, responsibility over power, and democracy over institutions. The organization believes civic partnership and responsibility are fundamental to achieving social and economic justice as well as peace. Joining us to share more is the president of Gray Panthers NYC, Jack Kupferman. And Jack, glad to have you.
I'm so grateful to be able to speak with you, Daren.
Yeah, I'm glad to talk to you too. And you do a lot in the area of advocacy. But before we get into the area of advocacy, just for our viewers, I gave them a little bit of background, but sure, take us through a little bit more about your organization.
You know, Gray Panthers has been around for a while. Now, what we've done over the course of years, some people may remember the name Maggie Kuhn. She had been one of the most important activists of the 20th century. And what she had done then and what she does is still relevant today. It's like nothing has, even though so much has changed, not that much has changed. She was at the forefront of the anti-war movement, all of the progressive movements, and highlighted the importance of intergenerational advocacy and making sure that the direct actions had an effect on the country and the world. Now, Gray Panthers continues in that realm and has done a great deal over the course of years. In the more recently, the past couple of years, we've been focusing on different aspects of ageism. And obviously, COVID is the issue of the moment. And within that, we've been focusing on the grief and the difficulties of long-term care and COVID and the tsunami of deaths. You know, and it continues to go on today with Omicron. So one of the items that we did most recently in last year, we had a very successful documentary highlighting the intersection of grief, COVID, death, and bring to the fore for just about everybody, because no one is not affected. And this, luckily we won an award for our documentary, and it's kind of spurred a lot of discussion. We'd encourage you to look at the documentary, which is on our YouTube channel, which is Gray Panthers NYC, and it's honoring nursing home lives lost.
Right.
Now,
and I want to
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, because I wanted to say that a lot of the work that you do, when you talk about ageism and really looking at those who've been affected in advocacy, I wanted to talk for a moment about how you approach that, because you're very intentional in what you do. And also, one of the things that I wanted to get at was how you really have said in your model that you're really about dealing with the person in as much as looking at their age. And I want you to speak to that.
Okay, well, you know, ageism, it cuts across generations. Ageism is it is primarily with regard to older people, but younger people and people of younger generations feel as though they are not addressed, their concerns are not addressed because of their age. And we expect to link those two. And we've been pretty successful in that in a number of ways. And we look at that as an essential partnership. Both generations have something to give, and they do. The older people may have the wisdom and the backgrounds. The younger people have the creativity, the enthusiasm, and today the technological skills. So those are two of the things that we link together. Now, in terms of let's look at the issue of long-term care. Long-term care is not an issue of old people. It's an issue for you and for your children. And long-term care, almost by definition, is ageism, because ageism is, one way to look at it is it's just invisibility. People are not seen. The concerns are not addressed. It is not possible for people who are 20 years of age to know what it's like to be 70. And yet, everybody who's 20, or almost everybody, wants to be 70. How are we going to address those things? So it's not about the generation, each generation, their concerns. It's about looking at it almost as a whole with segments. In terms of ageism, one of the things that we've been doing in terms of the intergenerational advocacy is we have a very successful internship program where we get some of the most talented young students from around the country to intern with us, and without fail, as they work with us, they tell me and they tell us that we didn't understand how important the concerns of older people are and how pervasive ageism is in everyday life. And they take this information and this style back to their colleges, back to their families, back to their communities. And they have become committed advocates as well. Now, as I was mentioning a little earlier, one of our current initiatives is about long-term care. And we've been doing, in addition to the documentary, we've had a monthly webinar series that we call Transformation Tuesdays to highlight the important and under-acknowledged aspects of long-term care reform and transformation. We just did one the other day, just yesterday, on the nursing home workforce, change in the public interest. Now, when we're talking about the various isms in the world, this one is the intersection, represents the intersection of racism, sexism, ageism, income inequality. And really, I'm a little skeptical that a whole lot of people care. It's important for us and everybody who's listening today to understand that this is an issue that affects all of us. Nursing home workers, the nursing home workforce, as well as the long-term care workforce, they do God's work. And not only are they underpaid, but the conditions are awful. They risk their lives on a daily basis to do incredibly hard work to help you and me and our loved ones. And the compensation, inadequate. Compensation for long-term care workers is often less than it is for fast food workers. In Yiddish, they say that's a shanda, a terrible thing. Now, the scope of this is enormous. There are tens of thousands of workers just in the state of New York that are affected by this. And part of what we want to do is we want to bring this issue to the fore. This is just one of the many issues that we've been talking about through the Transformation Tuesday series. And this is ageism, sexism, racism, income inequality. Let's look at the workforce themselves. Who are these people? Generally women, generally people of color, generally not particularly financially secure. They have their own children, they have their own problems, and this is damn hard work. and it's the labor of love. There's a number of initiatives. Governor Hochul is addressing some of this, but not in a concrete way, in a complete way. And we need to focus on that.
Can I jump in and ask a question about, when we live, most of us are dealing in New York City with this emerging housing market, and ageism, I know affects the housing in terms of people wanting to know how and when they're going to live, and particularly here in the broader Bronx. And I want you to also, before we get out of here, make sure that you highlight some of the things that are happening, particularly, close here to the Bronx as well. But talk to us about housing and how people are really concerned about this particular issue.
Well, in housing, with regard to whether it be multi-generational housing, in New York City, the issue of housing always a major issue, whether it's privately owned or rental. There is never enough, and whether it's a quote unquote affordable housing, first of all, what does affordable housing mean? It's usually out of the range of many people, and yet people are able to survive. In multi-generational households, particularly in the Bronx, are susceptible to COVID and to other similar diseases and plagues. The close quarters do not make it healthier for people. Access to housing, if anybody has ever looked for an apartment or a house in New York City, this is not an easy process, and the prices are going up everywhere, including in the Bronx. Despite the fact that there's been some improvement in the housing stock, certainly not enough, and certainly not enough for older people. When I had been working with in various in government, there was always such a surge of interest for affordable housing for seniors, and yet it just didn't exist. The waiting lists for these things are many years long, and the conditions in their people's current apartments deteriorate, and they're not always properly maintained. I don't know how we're going to rectify these concerns. This has been an eternal problem. Now, I also wanted to turn to some of the other things that we've been doing in the Bronx, that particularly during COVID. We highlighted a couple of families who were challenged during the lockdown and when the children were at home, and you saw this whole thing so clearly. The whole family was in the apartment at the same time, trying to study and work, and the stresses that were on. We did a couple of videos on that score. Also in the Bronx, because of the wave of death from COVID, and we wanted to acknowledge that the people behind these closed doors, behind these facilities, which are sometimes a prison. So what we did is that we did in nursing homes, what we did is that we were able to deliver flowers just to bring a moment of joy to these people. Another thing that we did in the Bronx, just to alleviate a little bit of the stress, there's the grandparent family apartments in the Bronx, which is the only place as I understand, in the country where it's specifically for grandparents taking care of grandchildren. We sponsored a pizza day where we just brought in X number of pizzas for the entire building. So those are just some of the things that we have done in the Bronx, and that we want to build our relationship with Bronx residents, to bring Bronx people, Bronx concerns into the advocacy for ageism, into the advocacy for progressive causes, to work with us to do direct actions, and to work with legislators and other policymakers throughout the borough, as well as throughout the city and the country. That's just one aspect of what we've done.
Can I jump in and ask a question about volunteering, because we're running short on time, but I do want to have the opportunity to allow those persons who may want to assist. And you talked about those who've worked. If a person is interested in volunteering, how can that occur?
On our website, which is greypanthersnyc.org, that's greypanthersnyc.org, and I want everybody to note that website needs an overhaul, and we're in the process of doing that now. There is a volunteer recruitment form that we would encourage you to use. You can also call me directly at 917-535-0457, 917-535-0457. And we would encourage as many people to join us as you would like. That's one way to do this. There's so much that we've been involved in. We've been involved in Social Security advocacy. We are planning a number of issues, a number of projects with regard to advocacy for long-term care, particularly focusing on ageism and in all communities, confronting systemic discriminations, and a whole host of other things. And there's just so much that we can talk about, and I don't know, I'm just excited to be here, and I'm hoping that something of what we're doing will make an impact on the people who are listening.
Definitely, I believe that people are listening, and when you talk about impact, yes, it's the organization is making an impact, as evidenced by, I think, what you talked about earlier, young people having the opportunity to have that experience of those who know about what ageism really is, and going back into their own culture and being able to do that. Do you find that the intergenerational approach is really one of the ways to really combat this?
Absolutely. In terms of combating, first of all, combating ageism, there are two components to that. One is education, to identify that this is an issue and how does it manifest itself. And secondly is familiarity. People of different generations, as they get together, not so much as the kumbaya, it's really nice to sit down and have tea. That's nice. But when they're working together side by side, both sides benefit from that. And even more importantly, the two individuals are working towards a common goal. This is what we need to do in today's society, to work together towards a common goal. And with the heart and the good heart that so many of us have, that's been almost overshadowed by the difficulties that we're facing in today's world.
Well, Jack, we got to leave it there. And thank you so much for joining us and sharing. And I know that there's a great deal of work to be done, but certainly you got boots on the ground, and want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and also exposing others to the issue of ageism. Thanks a lot for being with us, Jack Kupferman.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty, we want you to stay with us here on the Social Justice Forums. We'll be right back right after this. And welcome back to the show. January is National Slavery and Sex Trafficking Prevention Month. Now, more than 1,000 trafficking cases are reported annually in the greater New York area, and the majority of cases actually involve minors who run away from home. The Salvation Army raises awareness of the injustices of human trafficking by partnering with local organizations and coalitions, and they also help rescue and restore current victims by improving identification and prosecution of local traffickers. Here now and sharing more is the Salvation Army of Greater New York's Community Engagement Director, Jennifer Groff, and Pastor Lieutenant Clifford Douglas. And thank you so much for joining us. And Jennifer, I guess I'll begin with you as we talk about National Slavery and Sex Trafficking Prevention Month. It's not something that we want to glorify, but at the end of the day, the fact is there's so much that still affects us in this New York area.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that human trafficking is happening in their own backyard. And it's a huge problem in all of New York. Specifically, we focus our effort, which we call Pearl Essence. Pearl stands for purpose, empowered, appreciated, respected, and loved. And that's the message that we bring to the women that we meet working in the commercial sex industry, whether it's massage parlors or street prostitution. So yeah, in Brooklyn, there's a lot. We've been going out to East New York, to the women who are working on the track there. We come across about 40 women on a given night. So it's pretty pervasive.
And Lieutenant, I know the Salvation Army works very hard to partner and really deal with, as I said, the identification, but then also the prosecution of such. Talk to us about the agency's role and how you've been able to provide boots on the ground service.
So basically, we seek to provide services that would help these young women realize that they're more than what they're doing. One of the reasons we recognize that some of the women are in these situations or remain in these situations is because the persons who are taking advantage of them make them feel worthless and them to feel like, this is all that they're good for. But we step in to have them recognize that they're more than this, that they're not worth less, but they're worthwhile. And in doing so, we try to provide basic needs. Like, for example, when we go out, now that it's cold, we try to provide like gloves, scarves, mittens, because, it's cold out there. And that's one of the things they would say, like, oh, we're cold. We also have services such as counseling, and we have food pantry, soup kitchen. And we just try to encourage them and to show them that there's a better way, or there's other ways or means to make a living, or even to look after themselves.
Yeah. Jennifer, when we talk about this number going up, we see it across the greater New York area. We're seeing young people and even, adults who are now being involved in trafficking. But you do say that sometimes when an individual runs away from home, they actually become a prime candidate for trafficking. Share with us a little bit more about what we're learning here.
For sure. So human trafficking does not discriminate, but there are certain vulnerabilities that put someone at higher risk. Engagement or experience with foster care is a huge risk factor. As you mentioned, when a youth runs away, they will be, seeking shelter, seeking companionship, support, and can easily be identified by an exploiter or trafficker. So preventing or being a support service to children who are in the high risk category is one of our main focuses.
Lieutenant, walk us into the building and share with us, because you say that you're not only doing advocacy, but you're also providing a safe place and a safe space. And so for people who come through your doors, what services are available?
So basically, when an individual comes to us, we would have like a caseworker or a counselor available who would then speak to the individual, like take them aside and first of all, ask them like how they're doing, their reason for coming to the center, and then get an overall picture of what is happening. And from there, we can then indicate to them the various services we have. As I said to you before, we have food pantry, we have soup kitchen, there's counseling and praying sessions. And for other services that we ourselves may not be able to provide to them, if we know that this is something they really need, we outsource these services and we would direct them to agencies that will provide those services. But we also provide a warm place, especially now in the winter, a warm place for them to relax, enjoy the day. In some instances, we would have to provide shelter for them for a certain period of time.
When we talk about trafficking, as we know it, Jennifer, we know that there are many people who are still out there on the prowl, and young people as well as adults are being taken up daily as we speak right now. Mm-hmm. What can we do, and what's being done in terms of really trying to put a foothold on this and really try to disrupt the process here?
That's a great question. So a lot of agencies and service providers, such as the Salvation Army, meet in their local communities to figure out where the gaps in services are and how we can make up those missing services and programs, because it really takes a collaborative effort. Each and every organization has its strengths and its resources to be able to really have an impact, because it's estimated over 400,000 people are trafficked in the country. I think you mentioned there's, over around 1,000 cases reported in New York. So we just have to deal with the underlying factors, which are very difficult to confront. It's poverty, it's homelessness, all these things. So we have to come in, offer first step services, shelter. I mean, the one thing that we most need is more shelter. The Salvation Army has tried to fill that need with an emergency housing program for 1 week that women identified through the FBI can come stay with us, get respite, have meals, case management, so that hopefully this will be a transitional step for them to go into longer term housing and lead the life.
We say that when we talk about coming through those doors, it's important to come through the doors and be able to receive services and to have a place that you can actually unpack and let yourself go. But we know that when people come back there, they're not really letting themselves go. It takes a minute to really develop trust, especially when you've been violated, you've been abused, and you're really not certain about who to trust. Talk to me a little bit about your staff and how your staff really approaches those persons who are coming there, because there's an old saying that you have to connect before you can correct. And so talk a little bit about how you establish that connection in order to bring about this change in their lives.
Well, first and foremost, as you would know, when you approach an individual, the first thing you'd want to do is be welcoming, have a bright, pleasant smile. Hey, how are you? How are you doing? And then you would just look around. There are signs that you can observe. Some people might be nervous, they might be scared. You might see bruises on their hands. But then you just ask, how can I help you? How can I be of assistance to you today? And most of our staff, well, I should say all of our staff, are trained that when we see these signs, and even for any person coming through our door, to be welcoming, to be receptive, to allow individuals to know that the space that they're in is safe. They don't have to worry. The information that they share will not be shared with anyone. And it begins from there. And then building a conversation. How's your day going? How are you doing? How can we help you? Do you have family? Is there a need that we can address at this time? And it goes on from there. A lot of times, too, if you ask, can I pray with you? Is this something that I can pray with you for? And those little gestures open up the doors for us to have deeper conversations with individuals. Sometimes even offering them, are you thirsty? Would you like to have a drink of water? Do you need something to eat? Those kind gestures in themselves open up the doors for us to have deeper conversations and to get to the root of what's affecting individuals as they come through our doors.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, how hard is it when you're dealing with a person who's been in trafficking, and that road to a new life? It seems so easy. We could always talk about it. We could always say it. But for that individual that's a lived experience, it's not easy at all. So what do you do in terms of resources and things to help somebody go from a life of being a sex trafficking, human trafficking victim to now a place that they can have this new life and start all over and have what we call this day a sense of normalcy? Amidst COVID, we can't say anything's normal, but sense of normalcy.
Yeah, well, it is very hard, and we face a lot of challenges. If you look at the women who are working in illicit massage businesses, many of them are Chinese nationals who came here on a visa, and that visa may have expired, and they have a real fear of deportation. They have a fear of you know, safety of their family back home who paid a broker for them to be able to come here and to have the American dream, and it all gets twisted into a nightmare. So you begin to have to deal with really tough issues like immigration. Unfortunately, there's T visas out there for women who have been trafficked to get a proper visa to stay here and work here, and dealing with those women are probably one of the hardest to bring out of the life that they're in. And then if you look at women who are in street prostitution or even strip clubs, you're dealing usually with a lot of underlying trauma. Many of these women have had sexual abuse. Many of them have been trading sex for survival for some time, and that person who's exploited them may be a boyfriend, so they have a trauma bond with them, with that person, and breaking that takes time. It takes building rapport. It takes replacing the needs that are being met by we try to do that by shelter, food, childcare, anything we can to bring them out of that unsafe environment and lean on us as a friend, really, to help guide them. But the liberation is within them. They have to make that choice. It's not easy.
Yeah. So, Lieutenant, where do you go from here? I mean, this is the month of awareness, but I know the work still continues.
Yes. The work of the Salvation Army is never done. We're going 24/7 throughout the year. But there's a lot of things that can be done. And we would encourage those who are listening, those who are out there, if you see a sign, if you notice something, be vigilant. If you see something, say something. And not only that, there's so many ways in which you can partner with the Salvation Army to bring awareness to these situations and also to support. You can go to our website, salvationarmy.org, and there's so many ways in which you can donate or volunteer and partner with us so that we can together make our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, our friends safe and happy.
Yeah. And so, Jennifer, as we are getting ready to close down the segment in a few minutes, I want to take the time to have people who want to ask the question about knowing someone that's involved in trafficking. What can you do if you know someone that's involved in trafficking? Because it's not as easy as just pulling somebody out.
No, absolutely not. And I would really direct anyone to the national hotline. And that number is 888-373-7888. I'll just say that a little more slowly because I know I talk fast, but 888-373-7888. It's anonymous, survivors, victims, family members, friends, anyone can call that number. And it's really, it could really help.
Yeah. Lieutenant, for yourself and your staff, is there any way the public can assist?
Yes, we're always looking for volunteers, donation towards buying supplies. And as I said, they can visit our website. And from there, there's tons of ways in which they can support, donate, be our backbone in the community.
Yeah. I want to let you guys know that they both, though, I should say, thank you for the work of really dealing with the issue that is very prevalent in our community, but unfortunately, so many people don't even recognize the magnitude of what's going on when it comes to trafficking. And sometimes it can be going on right before us, and we in New York can turn that oblivious eye, not knowing. But certainly, thank you for the work that you're doing, Jennifer and Lieutenant Clifford Douglas, for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All righty. Well, I want to let you know that that concludes this segment. That also concludes the show here at the Social Justice Forums. We hope that you've enjoyed our guests today as they've come and given us insight into some of the inequities that people face. We like promoting civic engagement. We like giving people the opportunity to know how and who's being affected. And that's what you find out here on the Social Justice Forums. I'm Daren Jaime. If you want to join us next week, we're going to elevate the conversation continue the dialogue and invite you to be a part of the show, it's actually making a difference in terms of highlighting and bringing awareness. So thank you for joining us here on the Social Justice Forums. I'm Daren Jaime. Take care and God bless.